On the GBPUSD, we also have a beautiful position running at this particular point in time, as price action has broken down the support level of the channel we identified during the live session yesterday. So what were we looking at during the live session? So the first thing we noticed on the GBPUSD during the live session yesterday was the fact that price was caught within a channel between the 1.2400 level and the support level sitting at the $1.23800 level. And one thing about the support level here is the fact that it shares a beautiful confluence with that bullish trend line that has been guiding bullish momentum since the beginning of this year. I will be showing you how important that trend line is in a moment when we scale up to the daily time frame, but for the sake of this, I want to run through what our expectations were yesterday and what actually happened first of all before we move to the daily time frame. And in fact, what we saw, though we saw a false breakout of the 1.24 level yesterday and was later followed with selling pressure, and one thing that happened later on during the New York session, I think 3 hours into the New York session, we saw the breakdown retest of the 1.23800 level, giving us a good signal and confirmation to join that decline to the downside. In fact, the breakdown shares a confluence with that bullish trend line, and it was also a beautiful sign that the bullish trend line no longer have the capacity to continue to hold bullish momentum at that point. So we saw the breakdown of that structure happen, and we took advantage of that move to the downside at that point. And for those who are taking advantage of this opportunity there, kudos to you at this point, as you will currently be running with about 62 pips in profit. And price continued to drop to the downside, and remember, yesterday we also identified a structure at the 1.23400 level, where we said a breakdown of that level also will be giving us an opportunity to join to add more position to our existing trade. And what has actually happened here was a breakdown a couple of hours ago from the 1.234, and if you had also taken advantage of that one, you will currently be running with about 20 pips in profit at this point. So for everyone who are taking advantage of these opportunities on the GBPUSD, kudos to you, well done guys. What we want to be doing right now is to lock in our profit. We don't want to lose out on whatever we have gathered so far since in the last 24 hours. So we will definitely be moving our stop loss accordingly to lock in some profit. And where are we going to be locking the profit here? Well, I'm looking at somewhere right around the 1.23500 level. I want to give space for price action to breathe, as we might likely see some retracement back into structure before another wave of bearish momentum will happen. So let's give some room for price action to breathe in that regard. So with that being said, right now let's scale back, hop into the daily time frame, and let's take an holistic view of what is really going on in this market. Are we still going to be adding more position to our existing trade here, or are we going to be having a support level that might incite a reversal pattern at this point? So in that regard, we shall be scaling up back into the daily time frame. Let's see what we saw at the beginning of the week that made us to make that decision that we have made so far. So right on the daily time frame here, we had a simple setup where price action has been on a bullish momentum in the last 3 to 4 months, and in fact, in that regard, price action has continued to find higher highs and higher lows. We were able to connect the series of higher lows here to give us that bullish trend line that you can see on your screen right now. And in fact, the bullish trend line has continued to hold bullish momentum here, and in addition to that bullish trend line, we have a couple of structures around the 1.200 level and the 1.24500 area. And if we look at how this level has been a major determinant of price action in the last 6 months, we can see that this level has been a strong selling niche, though we had some attempt by the buyers to push price to the upside from this area in the month of April, but the buying pressure was so weak that we saw sellers take us out of all buy positions at this point to finally do a breakdown retest of the 1.245 during the month of June to signal the strength of the sellers. And in fact, since the breakdown happened in the month of June, price has continued to trade below this level to further emphasize how strong the sellers are in this market. Though we saw some attempt by the buyers in the month of December to break out of that structure one more time, but it was met with an engulfing bearish candle to further emphasize that sellers are still very strong. Now we saw what happened here in the last 2 weeks here. We saw every attempt by the buyers to break above the 1.245 level has been negated by selling pressure from that same area. So at this point, it's very, very obvious that the 1.245 level has been a strong selling niche, and this fit has been happening in the last 6 to 7 months, and we have continued to see the selling pressure begin again this week. Thank goodness we were lucky enough to be part of the sell position, and we were positioned ourselves in such a way that we could catch that move. Now the question now is, will the sell momentum continue? That is another question we want to be asking ourselves, and the answer lies in the current structure that we have here. And one thing I want us to be looking at here, considering the bullish momentum that has been guiding this bullish trend line that has been guiding bullish momentum since the beginning of the year, we might likely see a situation where price breaks down the 1.2 to 500, a level which also shares a beautiful confluence with that bullish trend line to signal a sell-off in this market. And if we look at how price action has been bullish in the last couple of months now, you would notice that the current structure appears, a retracement phase appears to be long overdue based on this current structure. So we had the first rejection here in the month of December. We had multiple rejection here in the last 2 weeks. We might likely see a sell-off coming in if it happens that price breaks down the 1.252 to 500 level. We might likely see another sell-off in this market. So let's see what is really going on the 4 hours time frame. So on the 4 hours time frame, what did we identify on the 4 hours time frame? So we saw things more clearly on the 4 hours time frame and how important this zone between the 1.245 and the 1.24 level is. So in the last 2 weeks here, we saw how selling pressure resumed as soon as buyers got into the 1.24 level and the 1.245 area. And this has led to the breakdown of this bullish trend line that has been holding price action since the beginning of the year. So we have this bullish trend line that has been holding price action bullish since the beginning of the year. We finally saw the breakdown of that structure yesterday to give us a signal that we might be having a trend continuation to the downside. And whenever we have a breakdown of a structure, there is a likelihood that price will come back, do a retest of structure. We don't know where it's going to be. It might likely come to the 1.24, the bullish trend line here, the 1.238 before another wave of bearish momentum could happen, and it might not go that far anyways and probably retest the 1.23400 level to send another decline to the downside. So we are going to be seeing things more clearly on the lower time frame. And one thing I also want to let you know here before we scale down to the 1 hour time frame is that the 1.2 to 500 is a strong demand zone which I was holding by pressure. I think mid-month we saw buy pressure here. We saw buy pressure here again last week, and price appears to be heading towards that area. So our TP target for this current sell position should fall in between the 1.2 to 850 and the 1.2 to 500 at least in the meantime, after which we want to see how price action will be reacting to this current structure to determine if we are going to be adding more position to our sell position, or we might getting ready to join a bullish momentum that might likely do a retracement phase into the structure that was broken to incite another wave to the downside. So we have a demand zone here which we are going to be taking into consideration while we scale down to the 1 hour time frame. So on the 1 hour time frame, I told you we already have a sell position running and we've moved our stop loss accordingly to lock in some profit. So going into the New York session today, how do we intend to take some trading opportunity here? Now what I'll be doing now is to bring out my line chart. Since we already been finding lower highs since the beginning of the week, I would like us to connect the series of lower highs here to give us a bearish trend line, which we shall definitely be using to guide our trading activity for today. So I will do some readjustments here. and so that this can cover all the pivot highs here. So this is what we have here. As you can see, price has consistently respected this bearish trend line, and every time price comes into the trend line, we see bearish momentum to the downside. So at this point, I'm hoping for those who had missed out on this opportunity, let's remain patient. We might likely see a situation where price comes back to do a retest of this trend line. And what makes this also interesting is the fact that the trend line shares a beautiful confluence with the structure at the 1.23400 level, a strong psychological level where we might be looking out for selling pressures around this area to add more position to our existing trade. So that is one scenario we shall be looking forward to join a bearish momentum here. Then another possibility of joining a bearish momentum falls around the 1.2300 level, another strong psychological level here. All right, I think 1.2310, I guess. Yes, 1.2310. So I would like to label that level 2 so that we can have a visual understanding of what I'm talking about here. So if instead price does not go to as far as the 1.234 here, and instead price drops below the 1.2310 level, that would be a good signal to add more position to our existing trade, as the buy positions around the 1.231 level would have been taken out at that point. So let's be on standby to catch that move if it happens, and that will be giving us a maximum of about 50 to 60 pips if price action continues in that direction. Now, thinking of buying the GBPUSD, I'm not keen to buying the GBPUSD with this current structure as long as price remains below the 1.234 area. However, if price breaks out of the 1.234 level, breaking out of that level and the bearish trend line here, we might likely be seeing this as a bullish signal. However, it is important that we look out for buying pressure around this area before we join that rally to the upside. And if the rally continues to the upside here, for me, I will be seeing this as a retracement of the previous impulse leg. Now, where the trend continuation will start, we don't know yet. If a breakout of the 1.234 level happens, then we shall be looking at the structures here at the 1.238 and the 1.24 level to look out for selling opportunities. So if a breakout of the 1.234 happens, let's wait for price to come within the structure, look out for selling opportunities from this area, then we could join that decline to the downside. But if you are a counter trend trader and you feel comfortable taking a counter trend position, or you are a scalper, you might want to take advantage of the breakout retest of the 1.234 level to the upside and ensure that you move your stop loss accordingly to lock in some profits, as you are definitely taking a counter trend opportunity and you don't want to get caught up in any sudden pullback that might likely happen around that area. So if you are not a counter trend trader, even if a breakout of the 1.234 happens, I would advise you to remain patient and wait at either this bus stop at the 1.238 or the bus stop at the 1.2400 level to look out for selling opportunities on the GBPUSD. So that is that on the GBPUSD for today. If you have any questions, feel free to drop your inquiries in the comment section.